Good evening. My name is Hugh McCall. I'm the Augusta Eleanor Thomas Bursar and Controller at the Boston Athenaeum. Quite a title for an accountant, I think. Before I introduce tonight's speakers, let me first draw your attention to the emergency exits. And in addition to the door that you came in, the principal door of the building, there's an emergency exit in the newspaper reading room on the far wall, and there's also one back by the children's library in the corridor, at the end of the corridor by the children's library in the restrooms. I need to tell you this. And second, if you have a cell phone or a pager, will you please turn it off? Thank you. I suspect that many of you here tonight are here, much like I am, because you love the world of sailing. Even those of you who are like me, who just knock about in a little small sailboat with a fiberglass hull, probably have fantasies. Fantasy lives about the life in the beautiful world of the classic wooden boats. And what were more wonderful than the universal rule J-class boats of the America's Cup during the 1930s? Tonight is a double treat. Two speakers, Carolyn Ford and Ann Converse. Two locations, Nantucket and Antigua. And two media, a book and a video. The book, set in Nantucket, takes us into the world of the classic wooden yacht, its restoration, its races. And the video then will take us down to the Caribbean, to the Antigua classic wooden yacht Regatta. There we will see three wonderful surviving J-boats in the 1999 race with the Shamrock V, Velsheda, and Endeavor II. Photographer Ann T. Converse is a Marion, Massachusetts-based photographer. Her work covers a wide range of dramatic subject matter, from thoroughbreds to yachting. Converse has shown her work extensively at various galleries throughout the Northeast. She is currently compiling work for two separate books, The Mystique of the Thoroughbreds, representing 10 years of work, and as yet untitled work about the 150th America's Cup Jubilee celebration in Cowes, England in August of 2001. Athenaeum member Carolyn M. Ford is an accomplished writer, producer, director, and videographer. She also serves as field producer for The Visionaries, a series produced for American public television. The show is in its 9th season and runs on public television stations nationwide. Ford is pursuing an independent documentary on Merrily, a classic wooden yacht that participated in the 150th America's Cup Jubilee celebration. Tonight's event will also be available on the Athenaeum's webpage as an audio or video broadcast through the WGBH Forum network. It will also be shown tomorrow noon at the Athenaeum in our Coolidge Seminar Room. Please join me in welcoming Ann Converse and Camie Ford.
Well, one of us has to start, so I guess I've been chosen to be it tonight. And I would like to start by saying it's really a treat to be here in the newly renovated Athenaeum, such a beautiful, beautiful building, and to be included in this wonderful series. And I want to thank Monica Higgins in particular for making this possible for us. As Hugh has already alluded to, probably many of you are sailors. You probably have sailed wooden boats or yachts. You may have raced them. You may have restored one or two. You may have even built a wooden boat. And you may have done all of the above. And you probably have knowledge that far exceeds ours. We do not consider ourselves to be experts in the subject of classic wooden yacht racing, but what we do have is a tremendous passion for the subject matter, which comes from our heritage and our childhoods in Marion. Annie and I both come from families where our grandparents and our parents were racers and sailors and had wonderful boats. And Annie and I both learned to sail on Herreshoff 12.5s, which are pretty little but adorable and wonderful sailing boats to learn on, and race even into old age, which I am fast approaching. Anyway, we have this great passion, and I am going to read you a little piece of the introduction, and this is in the book, and I think it sort of expresses how we feel about the aesthetic of classic wooden yacht racing. There is a sensuality inherent in wooden sailing crafts. Sound, touch, smell, sight, and taste are all stimulated in ways best known to those who share an addiction to the combination of wood, wind, and water. The sound of a wooden hull cutting through the water, the cracking of the timbers, mast and spars are unique in each vessel. The smell of a varnished mahogany or oiled teak dusted with salt spray. The feelings of a wheel rubbed smooth from years of experienced hands steering. The vision of voluminous sails cutting through the fog. The sound of bluffing jibs. These are all subjective memories which keep this small group of people hooked on spending arduous amounts of time, labor, love, and money on their wooden yachts. They perceive themselves as custodians of an ancient tradition. The subject matter, our subject matter, is esoteric and may seem narrow in scope, but for us it has been a rich and deepening adventure as we've explored this world of classic wooden yacht racing. Like Alice falling down the rabbit hole, we have discovered a world which is totally different in dimension, in vocabulary, mores, and rules, and is certainly rich with very colorful and salty characters. The deeper we go into this subject matter, the more fruitful it has become, and it is truly an adventure. We invite you to join us tonight on a trip which begins in Nantucket. We visit Antigua, and we're also going to Cowes, England, to show you some of the work from the Jubilee there in 2001. And we really want you to know how our work is about tracking this global subculture, the people who restore the yachts, and we were tracking their passion for what they do. Word about Annie's work. Annie had 18 years of documentation of the Opera House Cup race in Nantucket, and when I saw her work, I was so impressed with it. I said, Annie, I really think we should do something with this and make it into maybe a small book. And for me, the great challenge was to write a text around her pictures. It was the first time I'd ever done a picture book, and before I'd worked on television documentaries, which is similar, but the pictures are moving. And so for me, it was a great challenge to work with her beautiful photographs. So without any more ado, I want Annie to tell you about the book and our first adventure together professionally.
Okay. Thank you all for coming. This is great. Well, I had started photographing the Opera Cup race in 1983 and continued through the 1990s, and I just photographed it this summer as well. Some friends of mine who own a gorgeous Concordia yacht called Harbinger had started racing it at the first year it started in 1973. And they had conveyed to me many stories of sailing adventures and the beautiful yachts and, of course, the fun and characters involved. So I decided to finally start going over 1983. The race itself was started by a woman from Nantucket, Gwen Gaillard. She was the former owner of the Opera House Cup restaurant, started in the 1940s. Probably some of you had graced the halls of that in your days. It was closed in the 70s. But at the time, in the early 70s, she and her friends were saying they owned these gorgeous wooden yachts. There was no race for them to race in. So Gwen said, well, let's have a race, and I'll offer a dinner at the Opera Cup afterwards at the Opera House, and she'll give a cup. So thus was born the first race in '83 that only had 13 yachts. Today it's grown to at least 75 at times. And it really has become the mother of all classic yacht races. Has a small but enthusiastic crowd. You can meet people all over the world that have actually attended it, and I have, actually. And actually, it was in 1996 that I invited Camie over. I had convinced her that she had to come. I told her about it, and I said, well, why don't we do an article? And upon returning home, the article turned into a book after we viewed my 100-plus slides. And for us to go through the slides was an extremely daunting task. We made a sample copy and pursued some publishers, and then it was in 2001 that I was able to get some monies to self-publish the book, another daunting task. And I hired a graphic designer, and within 4 months we had a beautiful book consisting of 132 pages, 85 photographs, and accompanying text. It was printed in Hong Kong during the course of 7 months, which was quite an adventure in itself. There were at least 7 or more color corrections and typos, all sent via 2 to 3 day airmail, which was quite amazing. So the whole process was an incredible challenge, monumental in its own right for me, but I love seeing it emerge, and I think both Camie and I realized that we never could have done it without each other's help. And so here we will start a short adventure into the world of the Opera House Cup race. We could. Oh, it went. Okay, I think we might have lost this little light here.
Does anybody have a flashlight?
Well, we'll have to dim the lights to start showing the slides. Monica? Hello? Dimming the lights? Okay. Here we go. This was the first year of the Opera Cup race. At the time, there were 30 yachts that were racing, all starting at the same starting line at once. So you had boats from at least 30 feet to 100 feet starting at once. So that was quite interesting.
This is Baltimore 2, Pride of Baltimore 2. She is a clipper ship, and actually the second reproduction of the original Baltimore 2, the first reproduction was damaged, actually sank in a hurricane on May 14th, 1986, and then this ship was commissioned, which just brings to mind the fact that it's very important to document these boats when they're still afloat before something happens to them. Also, clipper ships are really the forerunners of racing yachts, because clipper ships, their job was to get from port to port as fast as possible, because whoever got into port with the goods first got the best price. So that is why we put the slide in.
This is a familiar sight. You have the famous rainbow catboat fleet that escorts the boats every year out of the harbor. In the background, you can see a familiar sight in Brant Point, which is covered with bodies admiring these gorgeous yachts. It's quite a good sight to see. And this is, some of you might know this kind of hairy start at times, but it was a bit of a hairy start. It had quite, unfortunately, not a bad disaster, but as you can see in the next 2 slides, it got a little close, but fortunately no one was hurt. The Windward boat was disqualified itself. This is the J-boat Shamrock V on the left and the 12-meter yacht Gleam racing off of Grant Point in 1994. Gleam is owned by Bob Tiedemann, who also owns Northern Light. He has preserved them to their originality and has won the Opera Cup 5 times twice with his boat Mariner, and he won the first race in '73, and then he's run 3 times with Gleam. And both of these boats, actually Shamrock was featured, actually it was Gleam and Northern Light that was featured in the famous Rosenfeld shot of the Flying Spinnakers. So it's quite amazing to have Shamrock on your tail.
And this is Shamrock V coming through the fog. I think it's a beautiful photograph. I just want to reiterate something that Hugh said. There's nothing like the J-boat, and this is the only wooden J-boat afloat today, Shamrock V. So when you see Shamrock V, it's like seeing a very rare species of animal, or like hearing somebody play a Stradivarius violin. The only thing is there's more than one Stradivarius violin, and it only takes one person to play it. It takes at least 20 people to sail this boat. So if you even have a chance to see this boat under sail, it is such a rare experience. This is Weatherly and Valiant. They are 2 of the 12 meters. Weatherly was built in the 1930s and found in 1986 in Seattle, Washington by George Hill and his wife. And they decided to buy her and restore her, and they had to bring her from Seattle around through the Panama Canal into Newport Harbor. It took them 2 years to do it. They mortgaged their house and their car to do it. They lost a rudder. I mean, the story just goes on and on. It's in the book if you want to read the whole story, but it really is an amazing story, and it's just a test to how passionate some people are about their wooden yachts, and also how incredibly, I mean, you don't have to be a wealthy person to do this.
This is the yacht Harbinger Concordia in the foreground. In the background, it's a 12-meter Valiant. The range of boats, you can see the range of boats that race, and this eventually ended up to have, there was a handicap system that was developed for classic yacht racing because of this race.
The Concordians, there are 103 Concordias that were built between 1938 and 1965, and all of them are intact today and being sailed, which really attests to the popularity of the class. Harbinger, the Concordia here, won the Opera House Cup in 1990. And this is Fortune. Fortune was built in 1926 and designed by B.B. Crowninshield. She's a staysail rig schooner and is owned by Don Glassy, who traded his beloved S-boat, a Beetle Cat, and put up $300 for this boat. And when he bought her, he said he had bought his Nightmare because he was sure that she would just sink or twist in half on a rogue wave or something. And he has had her since then. He has restored her to B.B. Crownshield's original specifications, and she won the Opera House Cup race in 1986 and again this year in August 2003.
Here we have a beautiful 28-foot Ilarion-class yacht. It was designed by Hersoff for him to sail in the shallow waters in Bermuda. And his boat was originally called the Ilarion. They're now made they still make them from wood as well as modern-day fiberglass versions. They're just lovely to see. And they have their own class in the Opera Cup.
And this is Regatta. Regatta is a New York 40, which is a Hersoff design built for the New York Yacht Club, one-class design. It's approximately the same size as a 12-meter. And this one was built in 1926. It was refitted in the year 2000 and was sailed across the Atlantic to Cowes, England in 2001 for the America's Cup Anniversary Jubilee celebration. She's owned by Halsey Hersoff, and he won first place with her in the vintage class at the Jubilee.
This is another yacht. Well, this is another Hairsoft design yacht called Neath, and that is a woman on the end there, of course, trying delicately to take down the sails. And it was really quite fun. I'd met the woman who used to skipper the yacht, who knew that woman, and ended up buying the book from me last year at the race. But I don't know if some of you are sailors, if you've been there.
Hanging on.
Mm-hmm. In the foreground, you have Ticonderoga, which is another Hairsoft, very, very famous Hairsoft design, and her exact replica, Radiance, in the background. The new replica is a very high-tech, modern fiberglass yacht with the carbon fiber sails, but looks exactly like her. A little bit faster, but...
This is called Sailing to the Next Mark. And in the foreground, which is really the boat behind, is When and If. When and If was commissioned by General George Patton in 1939 before he went away to the war. Therefore, it's named When and If I Ever Come Back. She was wrecked in the no-name storm of 1991 and found up on the rocks in Pride's Crossing, Massachusetts. She was restored by Ross Gannon and Nat Benjamin in Vineyard Haven, and she can now be chartered out of Vineyard Haven, so any of you are welcome to go aboard her when and if you choose.
This is in 1992. It was quite an interesting race. As you can see, the sky really did look like that. Those two boats slowly finished. There were other boats that off of Grant Point or Great Point that had to put their anchors out so they would not drift into the shoals or of Great Point. So it can be all varying weather conditions, which makes it quite exciting in Nantucket. These two boats did finish, but it was really more of a current and tide than any wind that brought them to the finish. And this was the year 98. These are some little swimmers swimming off of Whitehawk, another time when there was no wind. And it was the only year that they had to call the race off literally for no wind. But a lot of people had fun. And this is a yacht, Prospect of Whitby. She was built in Sparkman and Stevens design, built in 1964 by an Englishman called Arthur Slater. And in that year won the Admiral's Cup. She's since gone through various restorations, some improvements, and now she resides in Marion Harbor's beautiful, bright-hulled, varnished yacht sloop. And there is Gwen Gaillard, who is the owner, started the race, giving out a trophy at one year. They have different classes. They have probably about 5 different classes now. And then they have the overall trophy, which is, there is Don Glassy, looking a bit salty but happy, getting his Opera Cup trophy. So, okay, if we could have the lights. Oh, actually, you're okay, Camie.
The lights up might be a good idea. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Only because I can't read my notes without the lights. I feel like I'll use this mic. We're now going to go to Antigua. This is our next adventure. And the reason that Annie and I went there was that there were 2 people that we needed to interview for the book, and they were in Antigua at the Classic Wooden Yacht Week down there. So Annie said, you have to interview these people, Camie, for the book. So I said, well, I think I'll go out and get a camera because I'm much more comfortable behind a camera than I am just interviewing somebody straight because I'm a television person. So I bought a new, very high-tech digital camera, which was one of the first that was sort of professional grade. And I took it down with me, and I did the 2 interviews, and I ended up with about 20 hours worth of footage from the Antigua Classic Yacht Regatta. I brought the footage home, and I showed it to a friend of mine who has a foundation, and he said, you got to do this. You have to make a documentary. Here's the money. Make the documentary. So this is actually the shortened version of the original documentary called Wood, Wind, and Water, but it's set in Antigua just because we had the material and it was such a wonderful experience. So that was our next adventure together, professionally also, because Annie was the associate producer. So, with no more, oh yes, I have one more thing to say, and that is that if you get seasick, this is sort of a health hazard, you know. If you get seasick, either close your eyes or take a Dramamine. Those are the choices. Or that's it. Okay, so when you're ready. I am a creature of the sky and the sea. I can fly like an eagle, surf like a dolphin. My masts are spires in the sky. My fins are wet with salty residue. Wood between wind and waves. I was created by man, but conceived by God. I am a competitor, sleek and aggressive. When I race, I come alive. Tonight, I'll find a berth in Falmouth Harbor. I'm here with yachts from around the world for the Antigua Classic Yacht Regatta. We congregate here each April to match our skills against one another. But for now, I am happy to be here in port for the night.
My friend Ann Converse and I have arrived in Antigua on April 19th, 1999. It's my first trip to the Caribbean, and we have come to do research on a book on the Opera House Cup race of Nantucket. Many of the boats which race in Nantucket each August find their way south in the winter to sail the sapphire blue troughs of the Caribbean. The classic wooden yacht regatta consists of 3 days of handicap racing, as well as other activities, such as a tea party at the Admiral's Inn in English Harbor. A gig or dinghy race takes place offshore, providing an interesting contrast to the big yacht racing. Children of yacht owners are among the participants in this fun-filled and colorful event, creating a context from which to understand the youthful attachment to yachts and the sea, that for many becomes a passionate commitment in later life.
I grew up boating with my parents as they were yachting hobbyists. My father was a power boater and a fisherman, my mother a sailor and a racing sailor. So I grew up sailing stars and lightnings and Annisquam fish boats and turnabouts and that kind of thing. And just really have always loved the water.
When I was 12, Alcort had recently come out with a fiberglass version of a sailfish. I emptied out a bank account and bought my first boat when I was 12. I've always committed large sums, at least proportionately to my sailing habits.
My older brother had a beetle cat that I took over. I grew up with 3 brothers, and it was my only escape.
I'm a war baby. I'm born in '43 in Hamburg on the river, on the Elbe, and there was nothing. In the end of the 50s, we had, my brother and I, we had our first dinghy, and it was so rotten that one guy had always to empty, you know, to shovel the water out with a big bucket, and one guy could sail half hour, and then we switched.
Magic Carpet is a 56-foot yawl, owned and maintained by Todd Bassett and Lee Taylor. They put many hours of hard work into this unique vessel to keep her in prime condition. Racing on magic carpet is a most relaxed situation. Lee and Todd are gracious and laid-back hosts and really hadn't decided to race until they arrived here in Antigua. They found 4 other crew members on the docks the morning of the race. Ann and I were aboard to photograph and videotape, so we didn't count for much except for maybe ballast. We count down the seconds until starting time. We get a decent start, leaving some followers in our wake. Race 1 is called the Old Road Race, named for the Old Road Bluff, which is 1/2 mile off the second mark. The race covers a distance of 20 miles. Each leg of the race is about 4 miles. Snipe, a sleek 52-foot sloop, followed us during the first leg of the race. Always on our tail, just wouldn't leave us alone. Trying to pass us to leeward, she caught bad air from our sails and was left dead in the water. The speedometer says we are doing almost 9 knots.
8788.
A knot is approximately 1.12 miles per hour. That doesn't seem very fast, but when you're aboard a boat, it seems as if you're flying. There goes Snipe, cutting us off at the mark. Where did she come from? Racing becomes an aggressive sport, especially when it's time to round a mark. This is when one begins to realize that millions of dollars are at stake here, as these multi-ton hulls veer off collision courses. We are off to the second mark on the windward leg. The sails are close hauled here. There are 3 J-boats here in Antigua. This is the first time since the 1930s that Shamrock V, Endeavor, and Velsheda have raced against each other. Elizabeth Meyer, restorer of Shamrock V, describes J-boats this way.
I call essence of J, which is that the boat needs to be a big flat surface with a wheel standing on it, so that when you're sailing, you feel as if you're on a 130-foot ironing board in the middle of the ocean.
We round the second mark and let out our sails, but in the process lose control of the jib sheet. The third leg of the race is the downwind leg. This is where spinnakers are raised. It's probably visually the most appealing part of any yachting event. 2 more reaching tacks before the finish. The larger and faster boats are already passing us on their way back to the last mark, but because this is a handicap race and has many divisions, it doesn't impede our chance of winning. At the finish, we look back over the transom to see Ticonderoga and Whitehawk. Their appearances and famous short clipper bows, a familiar sight to many classic yacht enthusiasts. Whitehawk slows her speed after the finish. Designed and built by L. Francis Harrisoff, the 72-foot ketch Ticonderoga, affectionately called Ty, finished first 24 times in the first 37 races of her career between 1936 and 1951.
There'll never be a more famous boat in the world, I don't think, than this one, than Ticonderoga.
John England, one of the builders of Whitehawk, a Bruce King design.
She was built to be an expansion of Ticonderoga, but Bruce King, who did the modern design of Whitehawk, used the Bounty lines. People called the Bounty, Hershaw's 57-footer, the most beautiful boat ever designed or built, just because she was so one curve after another. It was a riot of changing curves, is the term.
Donald Tophius is the owner and developer of the W-class 76-foot yachts.
Men stand on the shoulders of giants, so it's only a compilation of what is considered the best in yacht design in the past. I started having conversations with Joel White up in Maine about designing a new one-design class of boats. we came up with a design that has traditional lines above the water, but with a modern underbody. The boats have fin keels and spade rudders. If Nathaniel Herreshoff had been alive today, or Starling Burgess, they would have availed themselves of all the modern technologies. I think there's a process for building a wooden boat that's very nice to watch. I have a deep aversion to fiberglass. I find it wasteful environmentally, and like the fact that in the new project, the W-Class, we're using renewable resources. The interior trim of this salon is American cherry. We use a lot of Douglas fir and western red cedar.
There are many different opinions as to how a restoration should be handled. Lee and Todd are traditionalists when it comes to maintaining magic carpet.
She was built in Germany in 1959, designed by Spockman and Stevens, built in the Matthiessen and Paulson yard over in Antigua, Germany.
In mid of her life, she was a flagship for the New York Yacht Club. If I had gobs and gobs of money, I might be able to take some of the older bronze fittings and have new bronze fittings made. But a boat like Magic Carpet is still so original, I would always want to keep her that.
The life of these yachts depends upon their usability. And I feel no compunction whatsoever about using modern materials as long as the look of the boat is original. It's sometimes hard to explain to people how vital the yachting industry is to artisans. We're trying to make sure that we don't lose the skills and the techniques that are just irreplaceable.
Most yacht builders and designers leave their unique stamp on a vessel in the way they handle detail. The deck nibbings of wild horses and white wings are traditional, yet individual, reflecting the artistic license of the builders. The boat stripes of the Joel White W-Class and the William Fife yachts, such as Belle Aventure, are the signatures of the designers. The transoms of Ticonderoga and Whitehawk identify them anywhere in the world. And the trailboard of Ticonderoga is one of a kind. For a complete change of venue, Saturday night we are aboard the Star Clipper, a 360-foot, four-masted brigantine tall ship, capable of speeds up to 19.4 knots. Although most have wooden hulls, some of the larger ones are built of steel. The Star Clipper carries 5 square sails on its foremast, 3 jibs, 4 staysails, 1 top staysail, 2 fishermen, and a spanker. 36,000 square feet of sail in all. Tonight, the party is hosted by Captain Uli Prusa. His love of sail training and racing has moved him to create the World Peace Cup, a new racing trophy for clipper ships who will compete here in Antigua.
Sailing is not only hoisting the sails and then it goes. Sailing is art. Nobody believed me that you can go with this kind of ship round the marks like a yacht. You can. And we do it tomorrow again. Huh?
It is a blustery morning. Rain squalls are threatening Falmouth Harbor and the sea beyond. I have waited many years for the chance to race on Shamrock V, the only wooden J-boat afloat today. Elizabeth Meyer, former owner and restorer of Shamrock V, is concerned that we are overmanned. Having lost the top spreader on the mast of her other J-boat, Endeavour, the day before, she is cautious about creating any more casualties.
Get out in regattas and you start pushing these boats really hard and you do break stuff. And it's always scary. You worry about these beautiful classics and you also worry about the people on board. Shamrock V was built in 1930, the first J-class sloop ever built, and the only remaining wooden J-class sloop. She came to America in 1986, donated to the Museum of Yachting by the Lipton Tea Company. Shamrock originally had a wooden mast in 1930 and a wooden boom. She now has an aluminum mast, and she's got a carbon fiber boom, Park Avenue boom, very light and strong. It would be quite an extreme thing to do to put a wooden mast 160 feet tall in a boat today.
Because Shamrock V is a J-boat, we're put in a later start. Velsheda is our main competition. We have a 6-minute-per-hour handicap on Velsheda, so this will give us a chance to win. As we approach the line, Velsheda luffs her jib in order to slow down and keep from crossing the line prematurely. As she picks up speed again, we are definitely about to be put in our place as she crosses our bow and streaks down our starboard rail, giving us an all-too-close view of this powerful racing machine. The proximity of this yacht sends chills down my spine as she almost scrapes the paint off our starboard rail. Velsheda has tacked to get a better vantage point for the start. We try to pull in our sails to point as high to windward as Velsheda, but we're getting bad air from her sail and get left in the dust. Hey, there's Tim Wright, a photographer who has the knack of riding the waves like jumping hurdles. He steers with one hand while snapping photos with the other. It's all I can do to stay on a 120-foot Shamrock and shoot with both hands on my camera. Today's course is the butterfly course, named for the shape traced by the yachts as they round the marks. There's not a moment to lose when a large hull is veering down on us. Each crew must be ready to move on an instant's notice.
Want to get up here?
Sometimes accidents occur. This crew member hit his head during the last tack. When we heel over, there's hardly anywhere to grab on. Sometimes straddling the side of the boat is the only way to give her ballast and stay on board. Setting the spinnaker for the downwind leg is a technical feat involving many crew because of the immense size of the sail. 8,500 square feet of material. The winches are used to pull the sail from one side of the boat to the other. The crew on one winch, or coffee grinder, slacken the tension as the crew on the other coffee grinder picks it up. The spinnaker is set for only this one leg of the race, as the wind comes from almost directly behind us. We're coasting. As we approach the finish, we harden up the sails to point higher to windward. We then tack and head directly for the finish line. The crew spies wild horses off in the distance, making a beeline for the finish. The finish is a great one for us because we win. Wild Horses is right behind us, making this a great race for her, too. We are cheered as we take down our sails and give Velsheda an accolade for a worthy performance. Every Sunday evening at sunset, there is a party at Shirley Heights. Among the people I met here were Catherine and Gordon Baxter.
A 3-masted 105-foot schooner.
A live schooner?
Yeah.
What's the name of it?
Catherine V. We're racing in the class of 5.
and then we sailed the boat as an empty hull to Maine with 11 tons of cypress. And in Maine, we did the interior Victorian style, with raised paneling and a fireplace and porcelain sinks.
Monday is the last day of racing. The schooners, like Catherine B., will have a good day today because of the immense flexibility in their sail designs. The last race is called the Cannonball Course. Yachts tack back and forth around 2 marks, and the effect is a parade of yachting pageantry. The winds are up to 27 knots, and the seas 10 to 12 feet. Having many sails, most comparatively small, provides options not available to sloops, ketches, and yawls. Uli Prusa, captain of the Star Clipper, describes some of the rigging and its functions.
Here we have Ticonderoga. She makes a tack. Ticonderoga is a ketch with a centerboard, like Whitehawk. This is Whitehawk. When they go on a reach, they pull up their centerboard and they are just flying. She runs 2 head sails and 2 reefs, in the main a reef and in the mizzen a reef. She has a reef because the wind is increasing, and when these ships heeling too much, then they're losing on speed. So you put a reef in and the ship is handy again. This is another little catch. She runs full sails. I'm very surprised. You see the difference, how she is heeling. If he would put the little sails, make the sails smaller, reefing, she would be much faster. This is the right wind for this boat. This boat is very, very heavy. They're just trying to pull up the mizzen staysail. So this is Flirty, this is a 200-foot classic staysail schooner. And he's running only the staysails and 2 jibs and the mizzen. Normally he puts his fishermen between the second and first mast and the last mast, so, but he is not doing it. When he is heeling too much, he has the water on deck and then it's too much.
And here's Tim Wright again, probably keeping drier in his inflatable than we are on the press boat.
This is a little gaff cutter. He has a bowsprit and then 2 head sails and a gaff main. Very, very handy. They need wind and then they go. This is now Velsheda again. Velsheda, you have to know, is built for races. Designed for races, like a horse born for races. But just gorgeous how they go through the water. The little boats, the 40-footers, and they had a little problem here and there, but for the big ships, they really needed this wind. This is always a picture when the ships can let go, you zooming into the finish line. What a moment. And you can make good, you can change the whole picture.
The finish of today's race is under optimum conditions. This finish truly shows each vessel being sailed to its full capacity. This is what each sailor yearns for, when sailing craft takes off with a spirit of its own. A living creation.
Always when you're on a boat like that and finishing, then you really don't want to stop sailing.
This classic yacht regatta in Antigua was a momentous event because all 3 J's were together for the first time since 1934. It was really exciting. We had hot competition. The boats are now sailing not level racing, but on a handicap system. And Shamrock sailed extremely well and sailed to her handicap and saved her time on Endeavor and Velsheda and won every single race and won the regatta.
You are free. You can go. Nobody is there telling you anything. You learn responsibility. in your boat, when you have somebody with you, you're already responsible. You have to know what you do. You learn quick and fast to deal with the nature. This is the thing. And once you picked up with the nature, you start to love the nature, respect the nature, and to enjoy it. These three things are the classic things about the sea.
Oh, great.
Tom Bassett and Lee Taylor in the SNC Magic
Lee,
come on, Traditional Class B. Catherine Gordon Baxter in Catherine B. Performance by a J-Class yacht, Shamrock V.
Well, thank you all. I hope everybody's still feeling all right. We just have a short selection of slides from the 150th America's Cup Jubilee, our last and final adventure for you all. It took place from the 19th to 25th of August 2001, where just over 200 yachts had congregated in the most amazing and breathtaking spectacle of yacht racing history ever to happen, and it probably will never happen again in our lifetime. There were yachts from the modern IMS boat racers to the classics participated in a total of 5 classes. It was hosted by the New York Yacht Club and the Royal Yacht Squadron. They had envisaged it. It was to commemorate the race that happened on August 22nd in 1851, in which the Royal Yacht Squadron had invited foreign yachts to compete for the 100 Guinea Cup race off the Isle of Wight in England. It had been an English race for years, held every year. The Yacht America had entered, won the race, and thus forever preserving the name of the race, called the America's Cup. This small selection of my many slides represents the body of work for 2 projects, a book and a video. And also, aside from the photographs, we have over 25 hours of video footage, too. So sit still. We've just got a few more to go.
And we have a flashlight now.
Oh, good.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, you got the light back on.
Yep. Okay. This is Yacht America.
Okay, this is the Yacht America. Hello? Yeah. Okay, this is the America, replica of the America. She was, in the original race on August 22nd, 1851, one of 7 schooners and 8 cutters to compete. Queen Victoria was standing outside of her home, Osborne House. And if you can see, do we have that pointer thing, Annie?
Yes, it is. It's right there. It's right there is the Osborne House.
That is the Osborne House, which is the view from the Osborne House is down a body of water called the Solent. So Queen Victoria looked down the Solent towards the Needles, and she said to her equerry, who was in first as the first boat came around the Needles, and the equerry said, "Ma'am, that's America." And she said, "Who's in second?" He said, "Ah, Your Majesty, there is no second." And actually, in actuality, Aurora, an English boat, did finish 8 minutes after America.
And this is the schooners racing. This is the start of the Round the Island race that was the main event for the whole 5 days of racing. It was 1 day of racing to commemorate the race. All of them started at the same time. And the Round the Island race was a 60 nautical mile race. And these are two William Fife design yachts. Twiga is D3 and Moonbeam of Fife. William Fife is a Scottish yacht designer and really England's equivalent to the Herreshoffs.
This is the bowsprit of a William Fife design, and as we mentioned in the video documentary, you can tell by the boat stripe whose design it is. That's sort of the signature of the designer.
This is another William Fife design yacht, and this has retained its originality all the way to the block and tackle, no winches. So as you can see, it takes quite many strong hands to pull in the sails and trim the main and trim them. This is probably one of the most beautiful boats there. This was a 23-meter yacht, Cambria, an English William Fife design yacht, that raced with the 3J boats that were there, Velsheda, Endeavour, and Shamrock V. And it was very difficult to take a bad picture of her. She was gorgeous. Oh, we have one. There we go.
This is Marilee. I call her the little Yankee yacht that could. She's a New York 40. She was restored specifically for this race at Cowes, up in Camden, Maine, actually. And she is a focal point of the documentary that we are working on Cowes. She's our star. She broke her boom the first race, and what you're seeing here is a jury rig boom that was made out of a tree trunk. They just took the bark off and stuck this jury rig boom up there. I got to race on her, which was a great experience, wonderful crew. And this is also Marilee in a pack, as you can see, and she's doing quite well against boats that are younger and faster, supposedly faster than she is. She was brilliantly maneuvered. It was amazing to see how she did at Cowes. Oh, this is a traffic jam. This is a pretty typical sight. Any of you who sail probably have seen stuff like this at starts. I call it bumper cars because it really is sort of like bumper cars. These boats, it's not that people don't have respect for other people's boats, but people seem to get very aggressive at starts, and this sort of situation happens.
This is a photograph of the W-class yachts that were featured in the video. Wild Horses and White Wings. Since 2000, they've been campaigning in the Mediterranean and chartering. And if you have a cool $1.5 million in your pocket, you can buy one. Be my choice if I won the lottery. This is a group of the 12 meters. In all, there were 37 12 meters that competed in two different classes. They had 12 meters from the 1900s to the 1970s. Just gorgeous sight. Well, should go on. There we go.
This is American Eagle. Some of you may know this 12 meter. She lives in Newport. She's owned by a friend of ours, Herb Marshall. And one of the things that's amazing about this global subculture is that wherever you go in the world, be it Sardinia for a race there, or Cowes, or Antigua, or Nantucket, the same bunch of people are there. And Herb usually shows up, and he brought a charter group over to Cowes and raced with the 12s.
This is Marichai, an English yacht, an example of one of the many modern IMC boats. Even though we're lovers of classics, it really was quite extraordinary to see these racing machines. And this is Endeavour racing off the Needles, which is a famous landmark off the land there in the Solent. This was the first day of racing. Oh, and this is Velsheda, who you saw in the video. She's my favorite J boat. This was just minutes before she lost her spinnaker. And this was the first day of racing. The winds were up to about 28 knots, so it was quite amazing. And we were on a we were on a crash boat. We were on a
chase boat for Velsheda. And Velsheda, every large yacht racing had a chase boat. The idea was that if anybody fell overboard, we would pick them up because they weren't going to turn around and pick their crew up. So we fortunately didn't have to pick anybody up that day. We did, however, rescue someone off of another boat who had broken their back.
Yeah. As you can see, she also, unfortunately, here also lost her main. And this was the finish to the Round the Island race, which was really quite wonderful because all the boats started at the same spot in their different classes and staggered starts, depending upon their class. But what was so gorgeous was that they all finished together. So you just had this amazing sight coming down the Solent, just a sea of sails.
This is a maxi yacht, Stealth. Stealth won the entire Jubilee Regatta at Cowes, and she is owned by Giovanni Agnelli of Fiat fame, with an Italian crew, and it was just a beautiful boat to watch, even if it was modern.
And here you have an example of one of the classics going downwind with the spinnaker. As you can see, I have no idea how long it is. But it was just incredible to see that. And that was also the end of the Round the Island race. And this final slide shows the skippers that had skippered America's Cup boats over the years. Olin Stevens is in the middle. You have the infamous and sometimes controversial Don Koch from the second to the right. And fourth from the right is Sir Peter Blake, who was very tragically killed in the Amazon about a month or two after that. You might have heard of that, on his yacht doing an environmental expedition. And of course, Dennis Conner is in there. He's sort of hidden, but we all know Dennis Conner, who unfortunately lost the Cup in '83, the first skipper to, but regained it in 1987 in Australia. And then Dean Barker is the sixth over. He's the New Zealand skipper that's done very, very well for New Zealand. So that's it, and I hope you've all enjoyed the evening. We thank you both all for coming.
Thank you very much, Anne and Camie. I hope these pictures can get us through the winter. They will very gladly answer your questions during the reception, and we invite you to hang around for our reception. And thank you all for coming tonight.